welcome back to Inverted Aviators RC. If it isn't abundantly clear by now, we love the UMX Turbo Timber Evolution from E-flite, and there's a whole lot of reasons why. For starters, it's tiny, it's super fast, it's really aerobatic. You can fly it in areas where there's not a whole lot of space, and our landing area is really confined and tight, but that's not the main reason that we're here today. As you can see, we're flying over this really beautiful pool we have, and this is going to be where we land. Now, believe it or not, you can get floats for this plane. There is a UMX Carbon Cub SS float set that fits perfectly on this plane. With just a few screws, you can take off your super nice Stoll wheels, which have saved our plane more than once, in fact, a ton of times. You can swap in this float set and immediately make your plane water ready. The good people at E-flite made this plane waterproof out of the box in case you wanted to throw on this float set, so you don't have to do any extra conformal coating or anything if you don't have a camera on the top. Now, if you do have a camera on the top, like what we have, we would suggest throwing on a little bit of conformal coating to any exposed electronics just to make sure nothing gets wet in case of an unscheduled submarine expedition. But with these floats on, you might be thinking, well, they've got to be pretty heavy, right? And they are a little bit heavier than the normal wheels that come with the plane, but the Evo actually has so much power with its motor that it can handle these extra weight that comes with the floats really, really well. As you can see, there's a little bit of aerobatics that we're doing and just showing off that it can handle the extra load really well. And since this plane does come with safe right out of the box, it is still really easy to fly if you just throw on safe and just float around, no pun intended. You can float around in the sky and just look at things and look at the nice sunset, even with the floats on. There's no hindrance in the aerobatic capabilities. Little fun fact about floats. Floats are nothing new. They've actually been around since 1910 when a guy in Marseille, France, Henri Fabry, or if you're aggressively American, Henry Faber, piloted an invention he called the Hydravian, which is an awesome name for a seaplane or a float plane. But they have been translated into RC a long, long time ago, and they work really, really well. And in just a minute here, you're going to see our first landing as we just circle around to make sure everything is super smooth and going well with our flight. And a few tips on how to actually land with floats. It's pretty similar to a normal takeoff and landing on a runway, except you are going to have to slow down a little bit more. First step is obviously scope out what your landing is going to be. As you can see, there's trees all around, there's a big fence, so we can't come and have a really shallow, slow landing. We have to come in and kind of bank really hard, kind of like how a Corsair would have to do when landing on an aircraft carrier. So we're just scoping out, making sure we have everything right here. As you can see, our pool is on the long way 47 by 20 feet. And for those of you who don't use the imperial measurement system, it's about 86% smaller than the penalty box in football, as you call it. So hopefully that helps everyone get a good, accurate measurement of what we're trying to land on. But as you go in, it's good to just reduce your speed, decrease throttle to slow down. You don't want to stall into the water, you just want to slow it down. And right before touching down, gently pull back on the elevator to reduce airspeed and flare up. And your goal is to just touch down the water and your plane will do the rest and you'll just smooth in there. And just like that, it's super easy to land with floats. Now, it is a little nerve-wracking thinking, well, I've got this electronic plane right above the water, but the plane itself does a really good job of keeping itself not wet. As you can see, it's just as easy as pulling back on the elevator and powering up, and you'll just scoop right out of the water. You will want to punch it a little bit, because if you just slowly increase the throttle, the plane might catch on the water a little bit more. So instead, get up to speed a little bit and then just punch it and climb and you'll be just fine. As you can see, again, we're just taking a very wide, slow approach, turning in, and now we've got it all lined up and you can just dive into the water. Makes it really smooth. Obviously not yet, because why would we land a ton of times in a video about floats, but it is super smooth to fly. And if you're wondering how we got this camera angle, we do have a video on how to add FPV to your UMX Turbo Timber Evolution, or really any plane for that matter, but it is a Wolfwhoop WT03 camera, and it's a very, very small camera, but the quality is actually pretty good for where we're sitting. You might be thinking, well, it's a little scratchy right now, but actually we're sitting with a house and a half between us, around, and a tree in the way, and it's still really nice views. We can all see all these branches, we can avoid them, and we can still set up our approach really, really well. And as you go in, you just gently go back on the throttle, set it down, and you got another landing. And one other thing, once you're in the water, since the rudder from the plane, or the wheel on the rudder isn't in the water, obviously, you could put a little plastic piece that jets into the water, but for the most part, you'll have no rudder authority. So you're kind of up to your own ability to aim yourself before you land, and then just coast once you're in the water, because you have no rudder authority with this plane once you get in the water. And another little fun fact about seaplanes for you, one of the hardest landings to do while on a seaplane is actually on really, really glassy, smooth water, kind of like what we're doing in this pool. But in real life, or I guess for real planes, a glassy surface will be reflective, and it'll actually be harder to judge the distance you are above the water. And so one of the hardest things to do, and one of the most dangerous landings to do, is when it's really smooth. So you might think that's the other way around when it's really choppy, but actually you can tell much easier how far you are away from the ground when the water is a little bit choppy. It's a little fun fact for you. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the UMX Turbo Timber Evolution, or the EVO for short, is one of our favorite planes. It's been through a whole lot. We've had this plane for a little over a year-ish, but we've crashed a whole ton of times. We've done a whole bunch of things to it, like put a hole in it so we can stick a camera on the top. We've even gutted the inside and put an 8-channel receiver on it so we can have a head tracker and all these different modifications, and this plane holds up really well to everything that we throw at it. So if you are concerned about flying a really small plane and people are saying that these smaller planes fly worse and they're harder to control, we would disagree with that wholeheartedly. I personally have had no experience with planes prior to the EVO, and I jumped in because, hey, it's a really cool looking plane and you can fly it slow with the flaps and it's got a really big landing gear. And I had somebody at the hobby shop say, nope, that's a horrible idea. You're going to crash. You should get a really, really big trainer. And while a trainer is good for someone who's a little more reserved when it comes to flying, I had a little bit of experience with quadcopters, and it turns out these planes are super fun to fly. And if you're nervous, you can throw on the safe mode, and then it will stabilize and will make sure you don't accidentally roll too much and smack into the ground. But these EVOs, even with the floats on it, are super duper fun to fly, and you can get these great shots looking over at a nice little sunset, and you can bring it in and land it on the water. So if you're thinking about getting into the hobby, the UMX Turbo Timber Evolution with a float set or even the normal Stoll tires are a great way to do it. As you can see, it's super flippy, it's super fun, and you can do all these things. It was really fun to see this plane fly from the ground with these floats on it, because it makes it a little easier to see, just a tiny bit, since the floats are only a little bit bigger than the tires. But it is cool to see this plane rolling and flipping and doing some knife edges and inverted flight with floats on the top. It just kind of looks fun. So if you're looking for a little way to spice up your flying experience, a float set will be a great way to do it. And these floats, again, they're the UMX Carbon Cub SS float set. We'll have it in the description, but they fit a whole bunch of different UMX planes. It's not just specific to the UMX Carbon Cub or the Turbo Timber Evolution. As long as your plane has a slot for tires, most likely these floats will work with it, because E-flite did a great job of making these cross-compatible, and we really appreciate that. And for that reason, the only downside of like the Crescendo is that it doesn't have a gear, so it doesn't have any floats. But wouldn't that be kind of a fun project to make floats for a glider, to make it almost not, or to make it so much less aerodynamic just for the fun of landing it on water? But yeah, it's just a whole new experience trying to land it on water. You have to come in a lot shallower, and you have to really time it up and then dip it right into the water. And once again, it's super smooth, it's super fun, and it's really easy once you get the hang of it. And as we pull into our last two little clips of a flight here, I want to give a quick shout out to, I guess, everybody who's watching this, because our channel has been growing really, really well over the past few months, and we really appreciate it. And without you guys, it'd be a lot harder to make these videos, just because it's super fun to put everything together and share our flying experience and how we put stuff together. And so we just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who's watched and liked and subscribed and just done everything in our community, our very small community that is. We do have a Discord server, and it's just super fun to talk to everybody and go over some new ideas and new things to do to these super fun planes, like throwing on a float set. But as you can see here, the floats are super fun to fly with. You can throw on a little knife edge, you can do all these banks and high rolls and all this fun stuff, and it doesn't really affect the overall flying experience. And believe it or not, it's actually a lot darker than it looks in this video. These Wolf Whoop cameras, you can change up the contrast and make it a lot easier to see. And as you can see, we actually had me on the diving board shining flashlights to really indicate where we had to come in and land. And now, while that wasn't actually a necessity, we can still see everything perfectly fine. It is fun that these cameras have so many different ways to customize and make it brighter or a little easier to see, or even boost up the colors a little bit if it's kind of gray outside. But it makes the flying experience a whole lot more fun, especially when you've got floats like these and you can land in a really small pool again. And overall, the addition of these floats are super, super fun. Again, if you're concerned that adding floats will take away any of the aerobaticness or any of the maneuverability, it's clear to see that it's just super flippy still with the floats on it. You can turn the rates all the way up and turn safe off, and just like that, you've got a whole bunch of different maneuverability. There's me showing you where to land right in the water. It makes it super simple. And we've got one last flight here for you. You can see me on the diving board saying, yep, we are ready to go. Let's throttle this thing up and get in the air. And just like that, we're up. Again, just punch it hard and you'll get it up off the ground, or at least off the water. And it's super simple. There's nothing that difficult about flying it on the water, so long as you have a little bit of knowledge, such as punch to get up. You'll have no rudder authority when you're actually on the water, and then just gently land in there. Again, you don't want to turn your plane into a pseudo sub, if you will, because that is a lot less fun to fish a plane out of the water. And fun fact, there are a lot more planes in the water than there are submarines in the sky, so it just gives you a little bit of insight on how dangerous it can be to land on the water, opposed to flying a submarine in the sky, since there are no fatalities of a submarine in the sky. But going back to the video, this has been super fun, and we really enjoy flying these planes, and we appreciate everyone who's watching it, because it makes the whole experience a lot more fun. So I'll let you guys just watch how we come into land here, and thank you guys so much for watching, and stick around for more fun flights like these. Thank you.